I've been at training camp the past 4 days, so naturally I have to talk about it. We're not even a full week into camp, but I do have some takeaways that I want to share ahead of the first preseason game tomorrow. I want to talk about some early takeaways from camp, some players that might be standing out, as well as some of the line combinations that we've seen, because some are anticipated, some not anticipated, especially on the back end. It looks very interesting. So I definitely am going to talk about the lines a little later in this video. But first, I do just want to give some of my early takeaways from camp, early first impressions on Jeff Blashill, the practices that he runs. I have been there the past 4 days. They have ran a lot of just drills. Today, Monday, was the first day that they did scrimmage. It's been a lot of kind of hard skating, lots of positioning, like specific positioning work, breakouts, regroups, kind of the stuff you'd expect early on in camp that not all teams do. Some teams jump into scrimmages right away. That was the Blackhawks for the past few years, kind of just eased into camp a little bit, not really going hard on day one like the Blackhawks did this year. That's definitely something I've noticed from Jeff Blashill's camp. They went hard right away. Like the first day, I wasn't there for the first day, but everything I heard was that it was a tough first skate. And then the following days that I've seen, all really difficult skates, lots and lots of skating. They've been on the ice for 2 hours each session, and it's not just easing into it, going through the motions. Like, these are tough skates that Jeff Blashill is running, and it's not sloppy stuff either. Like, there is intent behind these practices. They get on the ice and they're practicing right away. Like, literally hop on the ice, 30 seconds, they're in the first drill. That's something I really haven't seen in any practices at all. Like, usually you'll get 5 minutes or so just to kind of skate around, shoot some pucks on the open net, get a little bit warmed up, but he's really just having them jump right into it. I think it sets the tone really well for the skate. It's a high intensity, but it's a focus and it's a fast skate. Like, they don't go through each drill for too long. The drills don't really run on. It's like, we do the drill, you do it correctly, and once you do it correctly, you run through it a couple times, and then you're on to the next drill. It's not like dragging out 10 plus minutes. It's like 5 minutes per drill and then on to the next. And then with the positioning work, all very focused by Jeff Blashill. He will stop the drill if someone's out of position. He's not letting really anything slide at all. If you are out of position, he's going to stop the drill. He's going to come up to you. And I think that obviously that's how it should be, but I don't think that's how it is in every NHL camp. So early impressions on Jeff Blashill and this camp that he's running, he's very detail oriented. He's setting the tone for this season. He's not just letting guys get by. Everything he's doing seems focused and to have an intent behind it. And I think that is going to reflect in the Blackhawks early this season. I think they are going to come out of the gates a lot stronger than in years past, just because they seem like this training camp is going to make them ready to go. They're not easing into things like they kind of eased in the last season because they had an easier camp. This is a hard camp, and I think it's going to reflect early on in the season. I do think they're going to be ready to go. So those are some of my early impressions from camp, from talking to people at the rink the past few days. That's what I've gathered and what I've seen over the past weekend. So with that aside, I do want to get into a little more specifics, especially with some specific players that have stood out to me. I kind of more so focus on players that stood out or stand out in training camp, not as much as players that might be underperforming a little bit or being a little more sloppy in camp. I don't really read into that too much, more so that will figure itself out and it's not something to get too concerned. But the guys that come out really looking really well and looking good early, I think that's what I read into a little more, and that's what I'm going to focus on in this video. And I'll just kind of call some guys out as we go through the lines, because we do have our first look at what the NHL lines might be for this season. Now, we know what they are probably currently, but they are obviously subject to change and probably will change at least a little bit ahead of the season. But it definitely seems like some lines are kind of set in stone for this year. Jeff Blashill has talked about some specific lines that he likes and kind of what their purpose is. So I'm just going to go through here. Shout out to Blackhawks Focus on Twitter. He's been really good at getting the lines out from the practices. Now I'm going to go through the lines that they've been running throughout most of the practices. The lines they ran today in the scrimmage, especially the forward lines, were a little bit jumbled and don't quite look like what's actually going to be run in the NHL. I think these are more lines that might be for the preseason games, because there's going to be a lot of different guys playing in those. But I'm going to focus more on the lines that we've seen throughout the week, not necessarily the scrimmage lines, because they were a little jumbled. So starting off with the top line, the Bedard line has Ryan Donato and Andrei Burakovsky on the wings. Now, we haven't gotten too good of a look at this line because Burakovsky missed a day in camp with a minor injury, but I think this was to be expected. We knew it was going to be some form of Donato, Burakovsky, Teravainen, or Bertuzzi on that top line with Bedard, so this isn't like a huge surprise. I like the idea of having Burakovsky on that top line. That's someone that does play with some pace, and we know he can score a bit. Donato can score a bit, so there are goal scorers all across that top line. Definitely allows Bedard to be more of a playmaker, which I think is the player he actually wants to be. He's talked about that in the past. He wants to be more of a playmaker, not necessarily just a pure scorer, even though we obviously know he's got an amazing shot and he's capable of just being a sniper. But I think he wants to facilitate play more, and I think with Burakovsky and Donato on the wings, he is going to be able to do that. We saw Donato and Bedard together for a good part of the end of last season. It sounds like Blashill wants to kind of channel the chemistry that they had together and bring that into this year, which is the reasoning behind having Donato stay on the top line. So I think all in all, I like this line. I had Donato with Burakovsky on the second line with Frank Nazar in my mock lines before training camp, but I definitely don't mind having these two on the top line to at least get a look here. Hopefully we'll see in preseason games. I'm not sure what the preseason lines are going to be because they were kind of jumbled in the scrimmage, which makes me think we're not going to see Bedard play with these two in every single preseason game. We'll kind of see what happens with that, but I think as of right now, the NHL line will be Donato, Bedard, and Burakovsky. So that's kind of what the top line looks like. I like the idea of Burakovsky getting a look with Bedard because that's one of the few players, obviously he's a newcomer, so it's one of the few players that Bedard hasn't played with over the past season, so we'll kind of see if maybe there is something there. It's definitely worth a look. Moving on to the second line with Teravainen, Nazar, and Bertuzzi. I had Teravainen and Bertuzzi in my mock lines on the first line with Bedard, so in this case, they're on the second line with Nazar. I definitely like the idea of this line. Teravainen is that pure playmaker that really just seems to mesh well with any top six. He's a really good complementary option. And then you have Frank Nazar, who can really drive play, especially with his high-end speed. And then Bertuzzi's just that pure scorer. Bertuzzi's looked really good in camp, mostly with his shot and his goal scoring. He's been scoring goals in front of the net on shots, and obviously it's practice. You don't want to read into it too much, but it feels like every time I look at Bertuzzi, he scores. Every time I look at him shooting, he goes in somehow. Every time the puck goes to him in front of the net, he finds a way to score. He's had a really good showing here early in camp outside of maybe conditioning and skating. But Bertuzzi definitely looks good to start, and I do like the idea of him starting here with Teravainen and Nazar. Early in the summer, I wasn't sure exactly where Bertuzzi was going to fit in, but I definitely kind of like him with Teravainen, even though the two are slower players, which is really my only concern with this line, is that Teravainen and Bertuzzi are really the two slowest players in this forward group, and having both of them on the same line with a fast guy like Nazar, we'll just see how it works out. But outside of that, I really like how this line looks, and I think this top six kind of is obviously the expected top six in some order, and I like how this is shaping up. We'll definitely see how it plays here early in the season. The third line, which Jeff Blashill is referring to as his shutdown line, that's what he intends it to be, is Landon Slaggert with Jason Dickinson and Ilya Mikheyev. Now, Landon Slaggert did leave practice yesterday and did not play in the scrimmage today, so he is day-to-day. We'll see if he's ready to go. There really haven't been any updates on him, but Dickinson and Mikheyev definitely makes sense. Probably the two of the better defensive players on the team. I did say in a past video, I'm not crazy on Dickinson's defense. I think it can get a little overrated, but he still is a very solid defender, and he's very good in the face-off circle. And having a guy like Ilya Mikheyev, who's obviously very good defensively, I think that will only enhance Dickinson's play. And I think that as a shutdown line, I do like the idea of that. We know Landon Slagert's a guy, the production really wasn't there, but really everything else in his game was pretty good. He was good on the forecheck. He was good in his own zone. He's obviously very fast as well. So even if this isn't a very good offensive line, this should be pretty good defensively, and we know there are flashes there like Ilya Mikheyev. I love Ilya Mikheyev. I think he has a lot of offensive upside. We know Dickinson, even though he had a down year offensively last year, we saw what he did 2 years ago. We know there is some goal scoring upside there, and Slager's raw traits would lead you to believe that he can be better than what his production was last season. So I do like the makeup of this line as a kind of shutdown line. I think it makes a lot of sense. And that brings us to the fourth line, which as of right now is Colton Dach, Nick Foligno, and Sam Lafferty. Now I think this line would be good. However, it does leave a couple guys out of the lineup that we'll talk about in a bit here. But Colton Dach, I definitely want to see playing in the NHL this year. I think this is someone that could be in the long-term bottom six, so to have him playing with two good veterans, I think makes a lot of sense. Foligno, obviously, pretty old, just flat out old, but we know what he can do. especially in a bottom six, fourth line role. He's going to be very good in that role because we know he was able to handle himself in the top six last year. So to have him playing a fourth line role, I definitely think he's a plus player at that spot. And then Sam Lafferty's looked good so far in training camp. Definitely seems like he will be in the opening night lineup. And he's just a real solid, fast two-way player. So I like how this line's also built. I really am pleasantly surprised with the early lines. Again, these are obviously subject to change, and they probably will change at least a little bit before the opening night, but I definitely am pleasantly surprised with the buildup of all these lines. They're pretty similar to what I had in my mock lines. Now, it does leave a few guys out of the lineup, particularly Lukas Reichel, who it seems like it's going to take an injury to get Reichel in, really, unless he has a huge preseason or someone gets hurt. It's looking like Reichel's on the outside looking in for another year here. Reichel's look pretty good here early on in the practices, but the fast players do tend to stand out in the practices. We'll see how he actually plays during games. But yeah, it does not look too good for Reichel right now. It does look like he is the odd man out. He's been on a practice line with Oliver Moore and Ryan Green, which, I mean, that's just a super fun line. Probably not an NHL line right now, but all three of those players are fast and are skilled. So I like how that line's built up, but again, that's probably not an NHL line. Moore and Green have both looked pretty decent, especially Oliver Moore, because again, the speed guys tend to stand out at practice, but both those guys look like they'll be set for the AHL. So obviously a little bit disappointing for Lukas, but that's also was kind of to be expected. I really do like, though, overall how these forward lines will look, but we'll really see in these preseason games how they actually start to play, and we'll see how they are changed here before opening night. I do want to look at the defense pairs because I think these are way more interesting. Not as much as what I feel like the forward lines were kind of expected in a way. These defense pairs, we have Ethan Del Mastro on the first pair, I believe, with Sam Rinzel, which is probably the most shocking part there. I was not expecting EDM. EDM was someone I thought probably had the leg up for the third pair with Connor Murphy, but the early pairs here have him playing with Sam Rinzel, and I believe just based off kind of who goes and drills and how the scrimmage looked, I believe that's going to be the top pair right now. That's being treated as the top pair, not the third pair. Obviously, it's kind of hard to tell exactly, but I believe it's going to be Del Mastro with Rinzel. Now, Del Mastro's games, he played 24 games last year, and I felt like those went pretty underlooked. Just not really for his fault, mostly because of the Blackhawks had so many young defensemen that played. You think Wyatt Kaiser's second half of the season where he got called up there in March, he was really good. Obviously, Artem Levchinov was a highlight player for the Blackhawks through his 20 or so games that he played, and then Sam Rinzel's 9 games. Obviously, those got plenty of attention. So I think Del Mastro kind of went under the radar a bit, but he played really well. Now, I don't know exactly how he's going to play on the first pair, but I like the idea of Del Mastro with Rinzel. I think those players can complement each other pretty well. I think they actually play sort of similar. Rinzel might be a tad better offensively. They both kind of play off each other pretty well. So I like the idea of that pair. I think it's going to be interesting. Is Del Mastro going to play 20 plus minutes a night? We'll kind of see how this situation develops through camp, but it does. The Del Mastro and Rinzel have been a pair, and it seems like that is being treated as the top pair. So that'll be interesting to follow. The second pair is Wyatt Kaiser and Artem Levchinov. This was the pair that I was asking for. I know a lot of people also agreed and were asking for Wyatt Kaiser with Levchinov just because they played well together to end last season. So I'm really happy to see them together. And I'll tell you what, Wyatt Kaiser has been my favorite player to watch throughout training camp. He is moving so well. Obviously got the extension right before training camp hit. That 2-year extension, and man, he looks so good. I'm very excited for Wyatt Kaiser this year, and I think him with Levchinov is an exciting pair, and I think that one will stick throughout the season. And then the third pair right now is Vlasic and Murphy. Now, Vlasic, I don't know. I just don't know how the minutes are going to be divided. I think you look long term, and if you have Vlasic as your third pair shutdown defenseman, or even for this season, like a Vlasic Murphy shutdown pair does sound really good. The only thing is, you kind of are like, well, why? How many minutes is Vlasic going to play? Because you kind of want him playing 20 plus minutes per night, just based off what we've seen. And he is kind of the best defenseman on this team, I would say, right now. So it's kind of interesting to have him paired with Connor Murphy, because I guess there's a chance that's the top pair of Vlasic and Murphy, but I can't imagine Connor Murphy's playing 20 minutes a night at this point in his career. So I think not worrying really about who's the top pair, who's the third pair, and just looking at how these players might be able to play off each other. I think that might be the better thing to do right now. And I do like the idea of Vlasic Murphy being a shutdown player. Now, we know Blastos, he's came out and talked about how he wants that Dickinson line to be the shutdown forward line. Maybe this is his idea of a shutdown defensive pair that you can turn to late in the game. And I quite honestly like that idea. And I think the two, we know Murphy's a very good defensive defenseman. We know Vlasic's one of the better ones in the NHL. So this is definitely a shutdown pair. Again, I can't really help myself but to think like, okay, who's going to be that top pair? But I think we'll just kind of see how it goes in the preseason, kind of who plays with each other, and who knows, maybe Del Mastro struggles in the preseason. That's one of the reasons they brought in Matt Grzelcyk. But I think as of right now, we can kind of confidently say Del Mastro has the leg up over a Nolan Allen or Kevin Korchinski as to who will make the NHL roster. And it does seem like as of right now, the Blackhawks are planning to have EDM play in the NHL, and he is being paired with Sam Renzel right now. So let me know your thoughts on that. I'm kind of rambling on. I don't want to, go on too long saying the same stuff, but I'm really excited to see how these pairs end up on opening night. And it definitely seems like Korchinski and Allen will be in the AHL because they have been practicing together, which makes me think they will be the top pair in the AHL and not really be in the NHL this year, which I think makes sense. So those are lines, a few standouts. As I mentioned, Wyatt Kaiser's been very good. Bertuzzi's actually looked pretty good, which is a pleasant surprise. Connor Bedard's speed is definitely better. I wasn't sure after watching 2 of the informal practices last week. I was like, it's kind of too early to tell, but after watching a high-intensity training camp where everybody seems to be moving at pretty much 100%, it seems like Bedard is moving very, very well, and I'm excited to see him in preseason where we can actually see how fast he is compared to other players in game-like situations. But he's looked very good in camp. Those are a few of my standouts. I'm sure I'll have more before camp ends, but I wanted to make a little bit of a video here to talk about some stuff before the first preseason game, which again is tomorrow. I might have a recap video depending on how that game goes. We'll definitely be doing some live coverage over on my Twitter at Blackhawks Focus, so make sure to tap in there. That's going to do it for the video. More training camp updates to come. I'm sure we will be talking about the lines again shortly because I just cannot help myself.